What was the weirdest thing the weird kid did at school? Well, there was Frog Boy. All he did was run around the woods catching lizards, frogs, raising tadpoles in a bucket, that kinda stuff. He had AD before AD was a thing, so he was labeled active, and our teacher would sometimes just let him run out of the classroom to do a couple laps. He was just crazy energetic, but all smiles. He superglued the woodshop tools to the wall, and he covered the school kitchen with flour, that kind of stuff. He went on to be a professional motocross rider. The weird kid at my high school tied a string around his pencil case and pulled out around the halls pretending it was a dog. He still lives in my hometown. I think unemployed. Oh, also weird girl in middle school acted like a cat. She would meow and hiss at people, lick the water fountain and rub her body on the teacher's legs. In 8th grade. I have no idea where she ended up. For elementary school, I was that weird kid. I didn't talk until I was 5. And when I started, I had maybe a 20-word vocabulary and only spoke when spoken to for about 3 to 4 years. But at age 5, when I just started to talking, the local 10-year-old genius who was also our neighbor was actually a genius, graduated at 12 or something close, walked up to me and said, "The answer to every question can be found through observing," and then walked off. That's it. That is all he said. I, on the other hand, was, and still am, an absolute idiot. What I interpreted from what he said was, the answer to every question is observing. Now, I knew this kid had the smarts I didn't have. So I took what he said very seriously and unfortunately very literally. My parents were freaking out. My school had to call my parents multiple times. And eventually we had a big meeting that ended up landing me in therapy because for nearly a solid year, the only thing I ever said to anyone was observing. 2 multiply 2. Observing. What do you want for tea? Observing. What is on the TV? Observing. Why the heck are you such a stupid kid? Observing. At my middle school, someone decided to get a little attention with a good old-fashioned bomb threat. Except they thought that a bomb threat meant literally writing bomb threat somewhere. Worse yet, they misspelled the duck out of it and wrote boom threat. So we had to go on a brief, very awkward lockdown while the police checked the perimeter for booms. Every lunch he would put a baguette in his sleeve and secretly eat it. That shit ain't weird. Just a good strat so nobody steals your delicious bread. He heard that you'd automatically get suspended if you peed your pants at school. He wanted to find out if it was true. Peed his pants. Got suspended. Had a kid nicknamed Cheeseburger in the grade ahead of me in high school. He got his nickname because when it was time for his class to go to lunch, he snuck into the roof and crawled his way into the cafeteria, dropped down and proceeded to steal all the cheeseburger put out for lunch. Unfortunately they caught him in the act and sent him to the principal's office. A year later he was caught stealing a teacher's computer, and in the process of being arrested he bit the officer's hand, getting him sent to juvie never to be heard of again. We had a guy who wore a dragon tail, believing he was a dragon, and same story for a different guy, but his thing was wearing a cat bell. There were lots of rumors about the cat bell guy. Least weird thing was she would blow her nose and eat it. Bigger weird things were running headfirst into a wall shouting that she's stupid if she didn't get the scores she wanted. Another time running down the school field with teachers chasing while shouting I'm a ghost. Also announced she was pregnant because her boyfriend, who I don't know if was real, ejaculated her words on her knee. We always thought she had something going on and would tell the teachers something needed doing, but apparently they'd talk to the parents who refused tests. It was actually kind of sad and people generally just felt a bit sorry for her. He would say very obscure element on the periodic table and start singing about it as if it were his friend. We were like 7, 8. A guy I knew in high school had a mouse living in his car. Not a pet mouse or anything, just a wild mouse. He would intentionally leave food in the backseat for it. I almost didn't believe it until I saw the thing run under the seat when he opened the door. He also wore this full cow suit to school one time. which freaked an autistic kid who had a specific fear of cows. There was a lot of debate if he wore it to freak the kid out or if he wore it just to be weird. He's a youth pastor now. Showing us a video he uploaded to YouTube of him cutting his poop in half with a hanger as it was laying in the toilet bowl. Homemade poop knife. Thanks to Reddit. I can't take a dump without thinking of the poop knife. His locker only ever had 3 things in it. His American flag cape, one of those foldable razor scooters and a box turtle. He got mad that he didn't understand how to play a game at lunchtime, so he started hitting and punching the nearest person to him, who happened to be me, when I shoved him away and asked him what the heck was he doing. He whipped his dung out, charged at me, and when I shoved him away from me again he started crying and ran away with his member still sticking out. Jumping on the giant Christmas tree from the 2nd floor balcony. That was the last time they put a Christmas tree on our school. Had the weird kid in high school ask the teacher to use the bathroom. She said no and this dude legit stabbed his hand with a pencil. Went all the way through then asked if he could now. Shit was wild. In 1st grade there was this kid who stood by the sink in the back of the classroom eating bits of those brown paper towels. The teacher was constantly telling him to stop eating them and go back to his seat. In 1st grade I used to eat that gray paper they give you in math class. Not white lined paper, it's too slick. Just the gray kind, which I think is recycled and breaks down when you chew it. I was only 5, so I didn't understand that it isn't good for you. The compulsion was too strong to resist. Turned out that a lot of small children eat stuff like that when they are iron deficient anemic. Once my doctor put me on iron pills I stopped wanting the paper. Turned out that a lot of small children eat stuff like that when they are iron deficient anemic. Once my doctor put me on iron pills I stopped wanting the paper. It's so interesting how that works. Was the paper providing any of the iron your body was seeking? It's amazing that on some level we know what nutrient or mineral we are lacking and start to crave things that contain it, but not because we logically know it contains what we need. She wrote a list of all the girls and boys she wanted to kiss and murder, and then casually passed it out on the playground. A wild kid activated a fire hose and started blasting everyone that came his way. Students, teachers, didn't matter. Weird kid in elementary was a self-proclaimed alien. Once, while waiting for the bus, she told me on my planet we eat people like you, and proceeded to bite me. We later became friends in high school and she used to give me massages during lunch break in the quad. Just realized now she was likely tenderizing me. LOL, had this weird kid in my class who was otherwise okay, but just would do really unexplainable stuff. He once opened his lunchbox in class and threw the contents right onto the overhead ceiling fan. It was something liquidy and greenish. Hit the spinning fan. Splashed down all over us. The walls. The board. The poor teacher got the worst rain down on his face. As a punishment, the entire class was made to clean the classroom. Surprisingly, we were not mad at him. We all had a real good laugh at it. Sharpened a pencil super sharp. Muzzle loaded it into the recorder. Covered all the holes and blowgunned it at another kid. The pencil went between his eyeball and socket, so fortunately he kept his sight. In elementary school I was the weird kid. I stacked all the chairs in my classroom like a pyramid. I got away with this because my school opened up early to let kids in. We were supposed to be in the cafeteria. I know my class was left unlocked. Not the first time I snuck out of the cafeteria to look around unsupervised and get away from other people. It took me about 45 minutes. Only like 15 kids in that class, so not a lot of chairs. I thought it was the funniest thing ever at the time. Everyone else did not. I still get a slight chuckle out of it. Still kind of weird. I actually stacked lots of different things, and often in places, or into shapes they probably shouldn't be. When the teacher told him to sit down he screamed "Duck you cow." Fast forward 2 years, he tells everyone he's a vampire and stabs my friend with a pen to try to make him bleed. He was weird like. I don't know if they were the weird kid per se, but just someone I happened to encounter once in undergrad. One of our dining halls had a station that you could make yourself waffles at. So it had a container with batter in it for you to use with these little plastic cups for you to fill up and pour into the waffle iron. This was on the same counter, right next to where the Bagel station was. For reference. So one morning in between classes I'm prepping a Bagel for myself for breakfast, and there's two girls at the waffle station at the same time. I happened to overhear part of their conversation where one of the girls said something to the effect of "people think I'm weird, but I just don't get why," to her friend. Now this would normally be a totally valid thing to say. However, the statement was undercut immediately by her filling up the aforementioned cup with batter and then proceeding to immediately drink the entire cup of batter like it was some sort of waffle flavored milkshake, and then continued her conversation like she didn't just do the weirdest ducking thing I've ever seen. It's like 5 years later, and I'm still in disbelief. One girl used to run gallop around the playground on her own, pretending she was a horse. This is at too old an age for the rest of us to be doing this. Think 14, 15. She got a medicine degree and is doing her surgical training at the moment. I bumped into her in a hospital after over a decade. All I could think of to say was, "Do you still love horses?" She laughed and said she had her own horse now. Figures. Said absolutely nothing to anyone besides "I like cows" for about a month. Anything you said to him, regardless of the context or situation, "I like cows." The list is endless, but one incident sticks out in my mind. The boy was getting told off by the teacher, and instead of taking it on the chin, he decided to jump on the table, shout "I'm out of here," and proceed to run full pelt into a steel beam that was supporting the roof. Knocked himself out cold. Was a fun lesson by all accounts. Shout "I'm out of here," and by here he meant this plane of existence. He drove around the basketball courts, following the lines, on an imaginary bus. He'd stop to let people get on off the bus and then drive them to their stops, and we walked in a line behind him. When he stopped walking he'd mimic the door opening and closing and wouldn't let you on off if you didn't wait for the signal. Salutations, Ben the bus driver. I hope you achieved your dreams. To clear it up, this was in Australia, and he was between the ages of 8, 13 when I knew him. We all got on the bus, because when no one did he'd drive around looking sad. He did this all the time. Not once and not sporadically. Anytime he was outside he was imitating a bus driver. Bring a toaster and make tuna melts in computer class. He once asked me to play spies with him, knowing he didn't play with many people. I said yes. He took me on a mission around the school, before coming to a stop in front of bushes, pulling his pants all the way down, and then started peeing in the bushes. At that point I was out. He brought a blow-up doll to our farewell dance senior prom and they use A as his date, complete with fishnets and everything. There was a kid who used to eat erasers and growl at other kids. I feel like every school had a growler. Growler is interchangeable with girl, who keeps to herself, but hisses at people. I dated the weird kid in high school and even a few years after, and the weirdest thing he did was try to date his cousin. While we were together, he also ate grass, and him and his friends would talk about the flesh planet. I hated my life back then. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe.